Okay, hang on.
I'm
They have
spamming
crits.
them
Let's just
concrete.
over into them. Let's go. Right side concrete. Let's push.
Soldier tower.
True.
I'm not gonna be with this.
looking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm down.
They're all nuked. Damage.
Get that demo. Get the demo.
Focus this demo. They
Use the crits.
Nice.
Nice.
Take the
Soldier
mech.
Scout's coming in. Dead.
That's that.
Competitive TF2. An experience akin to slamming your balls in a car door and getting nostalgic for the feeling every year or so. I've always had an on and off relationship with TF2, and the thing that usually brings me back is the craving to play another season of Sixes. What can I say, the game mode just speaks to me. I hate these classes and I love CP. Comp isn't for everyone though, and that's perfectly fine. Believe me, I have my own problems with it. One of the most common complaints about comp is about the meta and how stale it is. Personally, I don't agree with this take. I find that the current Sixes meta is very dynamic and interesting, but I can see where this criticism is coming from an outsider's perspective. In Sixes, you will primarily see 4 classes, and those classes will have pretty set in stone loadouts. To experienced comp players, this isn't really much of an issue. Variety in comp comes from strategies that your team employs or from the creative actions of one player. Your loadout serves to be your general toolkit, and your in-game decisions are where creativity comes in. It's like how in fighting games you can have the same character with the same set of tools, and 2 people can play them completely differently.
Now, that was an interesting attempt from Cody, going for like a down tilt read on the tech chases versus a Moki style. He's going to be opting for more reactions.
The classic.
In terms of casual TF2 though, things are a bit different. Creativity and variety largely comes from class and loadout selection, where interesting strategies are reliant on how your weapons are combined and utilized. It's not to say that in comp you won't find people swapping weapons to match the situation, because you will. Plenty of weapons have situational niches, and we'll see some time to spotlight here and there. This isn't really the variety that casuals are looking for, however. What they want to see is people using non-meta options full time, but this just won't happen because of one thing: opportunity cost. In order to use something non-meta, you need to give up the meta. In Sixes, this is a pretty big ask. Take Soldier's Banners for example. These items are known in casual as some of the best items in the entire game, but in the fast-paced environment of comp, giving up the self-damage reduction of the gunboats is almost a death sentence. There are certain game states where something like the battalion's backup becomes a viable choice, but not every item is able to overcome this hurdle. Take for example the Liberty Launcher. This weapon is completely outclassed by the stock rocket launcher in pretty much every way. As long as Soldier can equip the stock launcher, the Liberty Launcher will never be able to truly shine. You know, this reminds me of another metagame that had a similar problem: Pokemon. More specifically, Smoke on Singles. The problem is simple. How do you make Furret viable in the same metagame as Garchomp? The answer is, you don't. Smoke on Singles have something called a usage-based tiering system. How it works is that you have Overused, which is the standard metagame where everything that isn't egregiously broken is allowed. Any Pokemon that doesn't see enough usage in this tier is able to drop to a tier below it called Underused. Underused is an opportunity for less desirable Pokemon to thrive where they would otherwise be steamrolled by meta competition. Now, I want to clarify that I don't play much competitive Pokemon. I am very much more of a can't eat lunch at my computer without Big Yellow kind of guy. But this tiering system makes me think about that problem with the Liberty Launcher. What if Soldier couldn't equip the stock rocket launcher? What if no class could equip their meta weapons? What if Comp TF2 had an underused tier? Now the first question we need to answer is, what weapons should be considered underused? At first, I thought this was going to be simple. I would go take a large sample of matches from logs.tf and tally up the usage rates for the weapons. It would take a while, but it would be completely doable. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem. Logs.tf will only list weapons if they deal damage in the match, meaning things like melee weapons will often just not show up in logs. I asked around and nobody knew of a better way to get these stats, so I decided to say fuck it and go off vibes. I have a good amount of experience in comp, so I feel like I'm qualified to say which items are meta staples and which ones aren't. Without further ado, let's get into the weapon bans and how they would affect the different classes. starting with Medic. Hello, this is Editing Pinecone. I forgot to mention that everything currently on the RGL whitelist would also be banned in this metagame. I guess No Restriction 6s is our version of Ubers then. Medic's banned weapons would be the crossbow, medigun, solemn vow, and uber saw. The banning of the stock medigun is probably the most impactful change in this metagame, since it means the only selectable medigun is the Kritzkrieg. With the Kritzkrieg, things won't be too different. Matches will still be decided by which team has uber advantage or disadvantage. Where things will be different, however, is in even uber situations. With stock, even uber situations involve two teams prodding each other with sacks in order to either force or drop the enemy medic in order to give themselves a full uber advantage that they could then push off of. With crits, this situation is a lot different. When you have a full crits charge, the best way of killing the enemy medic is with a fully charged crit sticky. Since both medics have this sniper-like power to kill each other, even situations become less about which team can create an opening and more about which team will shoot first. The Kritzkrieg will create a faster-paced, more explosive metagame that will heavily reward aggression and the ability to maintain positive momentum. There is a chance that this increased aggression can be a bad thing, however, with the game giving too much advantage to whoever takes the lead first. Overall, the Kritzkrieg and the sweeping changes inspired by it will do wonders in giving this metagame its own personality. Medic losing his crossbow is also huge for this metagame. Without it, Medic's effective range is neutered, meaning that players won't be able to go in as deep as they used to during teamfights. The loss of healing also means that players will die much faster, and capitalizing on damage will be much easier. Without the crossbow, the obvious choice for a primary is the overdose. Every overdose med has the mantra, if the crossbow didn't exist, this would be the meta, and that day has finally come. There's nothing really to say about the overdose, other than that the speed boost is nice for repositioning and whatnot. There is genuinely nothing to say about the other syringe guns. In comp, there is no universe where you deal any meaningful damage with these things. This makes the overdose's upside essentially free and makes it the only viable choice. And now we finish off Medic with his melee weapons, where the Ubersaw and Solemn Vow are banned. My first thought would be my personal pet weapon, the Vitasaw. In my opinion, this weapon is a lot better than people think, but that's a video for another day, or year. The Kritzkrieg meta does help to make the Vitasaw more appealing. The Kritzkrieg gives no defensive utility to the medic during his pops, meaning that you're more likely to die with a full tank since the rule pop it don't drop it isn't applicable here. On the other side of the coin, the crits meta would also hurt the Vitasaw somewhat. The biggest issue is that 15% Uber doesn't matter as much on a medigun that builds faster. On top of that, you still have its health penalty, and the fact that hitting somebody with your melee in comp is very much a rarity. In my opinion, the best melee to run would be stock, for the simple reason that it has no downsides. I don't see a point in using the amputator. In my opinion, you're more likely to hit someone with your melee than you are to get anything out of the amputator's upsides. The taunt is suicide, and the regen is useless because anytime you don't have someone to beam, you have the overdose to get the speed boost, which is always better. Overall, the weapon bans make Medic less efficient at healing, which changes how teamfights will play out and will limit how far his teammates can stray away from him, which should cause teammates to go a lot faster and feel more explosive. The true implications of how the Kritzkrieg affects the metagame will be seen when we look at the other classes and see how they fare in this more aggressive metagame. And now we move on to the second most important class in Sixes, Demoman. His banned weapons are the Grenade Launcher, Iron Bomber, Sticky Bomb Launcher, Bottle, and Half Zatoichi. Without the Sticky Bomb Launcher, the best option for demo becomes the Quickie Bomb Launcher. The Quickie is overall a really good weapon. You trade half your clip to make your bombs better at close and long range, essentially trading sustainability for flexibility. The Quickie also fits well in a crits-only metagame due to its faster charge. A Kritzkrieg pop is best used on your demo man so he can drop the enemy medic with a fully charged crit sticky, and the Quickie Bomb Launcher is purpose-built for exactly that. The Quickie Bomb Launcher does have the downside of a halved clip, which does hurt its sustainability, but thankfully Demoman still has one grenade launcher that he can use to supplement it. The Loose Cannon and the Quickie Bomb Launcher are known to be two weapons that go together well in casual. This combo has never clicked with me personally, but that's probably because I suck complete ass with the Loose Cannon. Nevertheless, I still see the theory behind this concept. The Quickie Bomb Launcher trades in-fight sustainability for the ability to do better at other ranges, and the Loose Cannon is a grenade launcher that struggles at close range and pops off at mid-range. The loose cannon is the missing piece in the Quickie Bomb Launcher's game plan for teamfights, especially in the hands of someone who can consistently double donk. There are other secondaries that could have some potential use. The Scottish Resistance would have a valuable niche defending last with its extra bombs and select detonation. The main weakness it has is its arm time, which prevents it from being used offensively. Plus, the Quickie Bomb Launcher's ability to destroy enemy sticky bombs could hurt it, but I still see it performing well in last holds. Demoman's shields are an interesting case in comp. I mean, you have Odin winning in Europe, which kind of proves his viability. Man, this guy's so good. Was he cheating or something? Oh. Nevertheless, Demo Knight still has some sauce to him, and there have been people other than Odin who've picked him up and tried to make him work in competitive. The problem is that most people who try him use him with the half Zatoichi, which is now banned due to its use on regular demo. The immediate short-term benefit of health on kill is what allows them to play so aggressively, and it's going to be really hard to replicate that. My first choice for a sword would be the Persian Persuader for its ability to grant multiple charges. The remaining options don't provide the same amount of short-term benefit, except for the Caber, whose benefit is 2 short-term. One thing that helps Demo Knight's case is that he has the ability to roll out without taking any damage. This is important for reasons that we'll go into later when we talk more about Soldier. As for melee options on heterosexual demo, I think the Skull Cutter is the clear choice for its lack of downsides, but the Pain Train could also be useful if you want something quicker on the draw. Overall, Demoman's viability is in a good place in this metagame. Having to use the loose cannon over pipes kinda sucks, but he still has the Quickie Bomb Launcher and a crit smed to go with it, so he's eating good. Demo Knight is also an interesting option if you think it's worth it to trade your secondary for what's essentially a ground-based soldier bomb that's harder to deny. Personally, I don't see this trade being worth it as long as Demo remains to be the best crits recipient in the entire game. At the very least, I do want to talk about Demo Knight a little bit just in case the Quickie Bomb Launcher does get banned eventually. This is just me kind of future-proofing this video. The important thing is that no matter what you pick, Demoman remains to be the same meta-defining class that he is in normal 6s. The next class we're going to be talking about is Scout, whose banned weapons are the Scattergun, Pistol, Boston Basher, and Rap Assassin. Without the Scattergun, I see a trio of weapons trying to take its place. These weapons are the Force of Nature, Backscatter, and Shortstop, which all somewhat exist on a spectrum of damage and sustainability. The Force of Nature is an absolute powerhouse. Its damage output is the best of the available primaries with a max damage that surpasses the stock Scattergun. Combined with a faster firing speed, this thing can mulch enemies at close range. But that's the thing, at close range. The Force of Nature's mid-range capabilities are crippled by its reduced clip size despite the fact that its damage is still respectable. Combat with Scout usually looks like this. You start shooting the target at mid-range to trip them. As you get closer, you start dealing more and more damage until you secure the kill. Scout is also great at finishing off targets that he knows are low on health. You can keep your mid-range distance to finish off a weak target without running the risk of overextending into the enemy team. The Force of Nature struggles in this regard since you need to close the distance before you shoot since your shots are much less disposable. The Force of Nature's knockback mechanic also has some interesting implications. Offensively, it could help with denying soldier bombs, and fan jumping can open new doors for mobility, but could be slightly devalued by the winger, which all scouts are forced to run. There is the argument that the knockback does more harm than good, but I don't really agree with this. Knocking enemies away from your effective range can cost you some damage, especially on the more open parts of the map like mid. However, knocking enemies back is almost always a good thing since you force one enemy to lose ground, which can separate the team or otherwise put them in an unoptimal position that your team can capitalize on. Knockback can also negatively affect your movement by limiting how you can shoot while mid-air, but I think with some practice a good scout can work around this limitation to keep their evasiveness while still being able to take full advantage of the Force of Nature's strengths. Overall, the Force of Nature has a lot going for it. Its raw damage debatably makes it the best choice, but only in the hands of a scout willing to adapt to its weird quirks. If you want something more straightforward, then the Backscatter can be a good fit if you want that heterosexual missionary position, no car battery, no bungee cords in sight type shit. The best parts of the Backscatter are its similarities to the stock Scattergun. It has the same meat shot damage and 4 shells that reload individually. I would say that this weapon is better than the Force in Nature in close range 1v1 engagements because you can afford to miss a shot and still kill your enemy without being forced to reload or switch to your secondary. The biggest weakness of the backscatter is its accuracy, which affects its mid-range damage and its ability to deny soldier bombs. Out of all of Scout's primaries, I would say it's actually the worst at doing these, which forces Scouts to adopt a more close-range, skirmish-heavy playstyle. And oh yeah, the mini-crit thing, the whole point of the weapon, we should probably talk about that. I see it being a nice bonus when making a flank play, but I don't really see it being the centralizing part of this weapon. The best part of the backscatter is that it's a nerfed version of a great weapon. Its ability to backshot is just a nice cherry on top. On the most extreme end of the damage and sustainability spectrum, we have the shortstop. The shortstop is often underrated by casual players, but this thing could put out some respectable damage in the hands of a good scout, especially with random bullet spread turned off. However, the shortstop is on the far end of the damage spectrum for a reason. While its damage is good, it lacks the raw meat shot power of the other options. In order to make the most of this weapon, you'll need to play a bit more passively and focus on finishing off enemies who've been hurt by the rest of your team. For this reason, I think the shortstop will be the go-to choice for flank scouts. The lack of available health caused by the crossbow's absence will compound this choice. The lack of healing will force scouts to play more carefully, while also making damage more permanent, which helps warrant the passive finisher role the shortstop has. The last of Scout's available primaries is the Babyface's Blaster, which I don't see being useful. Its ability to essentially be a backscatter without the accuracy penalty is huge, but its speed penalty just isn't a pill worth swallowing. The boost mechanic doesn't help, because one chip shot will cause you to lag behind your team and get picked off. For Scout's secondaries, he has a lot of options, like the winger, and if you're feeling quirky, the winger. While deciding weapon bans, I was contemplating allowing Scout to use his pistol for the sake of loadout variety, but I feel like that would have been an arbitrary decision that goes against the point of this thought experiment. There's also the issue that the winger is a very commonly seen side grade, and that me allowing it should also mean that weapons like the Rap Assassin and Ubersaw should also be unbanned. My solution to this problem was to not care. Like I said earlier, the ban list is formed from my experience and vibes, and I'm fine with the rules being a tad bit inconsistent for the sake of giving Scout a secondary he can use. Anyway, getting back on topic, the winger is far from the worst weapon in the game to get stuck with. Its jump height bonus can be used in combat to reach high ground faster, and it can also be used out of combat to reach flank routes and hiding spots. Because every unlockable scout primary needs a clip size penalty for some reason, the winger's ability to be a good ass pistol is very much appreciated. This is especially true for weapons like the Force in Nature and the shortstop who don't have the luxury of being able to quickly load one shell during a fight. Without the Boston Basher or the Rap Assassin, Scout is forced to scrape the bottom of the barrel and consider melee options that aren't commonly seen even in casual. The Atomizer is the last of Scout's conventionally good melees, but unfortunately it just isn't really suited for the meta. The jump height boost from the winger makes the extra jump from the Atomizer kinda redundant. There just aren't really any jumps that require both. It's still a really good choice if you don't see yourself using your melee, because extra mobility is never a bad thing. On the other hand, using your melee for combat actually has some merit here. All primaries and the winger have clip size penalties, and most of the viable primaries reload their entire clips at once. This means you will more likely find yourself in a situation where your primary and secondary are both unloaded, and the best way to finish off an enemy is with a couple whacks from a fish. The Sandman has the opportunity to become this meta's version of the Rap Assassin. You could use it in the same way, where you launch it at mid in order to chip the demo or the med. People will say that the slowdown is useless due to the fact that you can negate it by mashing your strafe keys while running. In this situation, the Sandman still has value since doing this tech makes your movement a lot more predictable, and the second that you try to move more evasively, you'll be met with the slower move speed. The Sandman does also reduce your max health and overheal, which does suck a lot, but if you're good enough at hitting balls, I can see the Sandman being worth the trade. Lastly, we have the Fan of War, a real fucking weirdo of an item. Like, everyone knows why this thing is bad. Running up to somebody and marking them with a melee is just redundant when Scout does so much close range damage. You can usually kill your target faster and with much less effort if you just use your gun. Even against something like a pocketed power class, the Fan just doesn't seem worth it because yes, you can try to mark that demo with mini crits, or you can choose the simpler and easier option, just shoot him and have the damage you deal be the support your team needs to kill him. But at the same time, mini crits. For 15 seconds. I'm confident that somebody is going to be able to make something happen with this. Scout's best attribute will always be his speed, and these weapons don't inhibit that at all. His damage is still really good too, with the weapon bans only really affecting his in-fight sustain. Like Demo, Scout is the same class that we see in regular 6s, but with some key deviations, like Pocket and Flank Scout being separated with weapons and not just playstyle. The last of the traditional 6s classes is Soldier, whose banned weapons are the Rocket Launcher, Original, Gunboats, Escape Plan, and the Market Gardener. Like Demo and Medic, we're going to talk about his secondaries first because the Gunboats ban is one of the most impactful bans in this metagame. Soldier's 9-5 is being mobile and bombing, and now he's much less efficient at that. The biggest issue I see would be rollouts, because without Gunboats, the Crossbow, or the Escape Plan, getting 2 healthy soldiers to mid on time is now a much harder task. You might see meds foregoing scout speed in order to beam the soldiers for the rollout at the cost of getting the mid slower himself. Soldiers are still going to be some of the best classes at fighting mid, but teams will have to find the ratio of health and speed that works best for them. The Gunboats ban hurts, but thankfully Soldier has the most consistent and well-balanced lineup of secondaries of all the classes. Without the Gunboats, the candidate for the most used secondary will probably be the Shotgun. 6s is all about the short term, and the Shotgun gives you more firepower to work with in teamfights. Because of the bans, every other class takes a hit to their in-fight sustainability. Soldier is the only class who can receive an increase to his. The Panic Attack is a shotgun side grade that trades mid-range damage for more close-range damage and a faster switch speed. I see it being better for shotgun bombs while being worse than stock in general combat scenarios. Overall, both it and the shotgun will be great choices in this meta. The banners are some of the most powerful items in the entire game that are honestly underrated in normal 6s, but that's a topic for another day. The Battalion's backup might actually be ban-worthy from this metagame due to its ability to negate crits. This would make it this metagame's version of a UUBL Pokemon. Even in normal 6s, the Battalion's is banned in Europe due to how it performs in last holds. If you can get enough spam to build your banner, you can pop it in response to the enemy pushing in. While an Uber Charge negates all damage, the Battalion's negates 35% of it, meaning it turns a bad situation into one that's less bad. With crits, the Battalion's is a lot stronger. You negate their damage bonus while giving yourself a damage resistance, turning this from a situation that's bad for you into one where you're at an advantage. The biggest problem that I see with the Battalion's is that its inclusion can create an environment where the team that gets an advantage first will most likely be the one that wins. Imagine this, a medic uses his crits on their demo to snipe the enemy med and a couple others. He then gives the remainder of the Uber to his soldier, who kills the stragglers while building his banner. Now their team has crits advantage and the ability to negate the enemy's crits if they manage to catch up. You can also just use the buff with the crits advantage in order to make a virtually unstoppable push into the enemy last. If the Battalions were to be allowed, it would be a very over-centralizing option that would harm the metagame overall. The other banners, while not being game-breaking, would still be amazing options in their own right. The Conch is an extremely powerful and extremely versatile option that would be the go-to banner if the Battalions were to be banned. The obvious use of the Conch is blowing it for team pushes, and yeah, it's kinda hard to say anything other than it's really good. The speed and health on hit allows your team to rush in and leverage their aggression more. The buff can also be used selfishly with a soldier using it to get a more efficient sack. The buff banner carves a niche for itself by being a discount crits Krieg. You can use it to push while keeping your crits in your back pocket for later. For example, you can push into second with the banner while saving your Uber for last. You can also use the buff banner in case of the crits Krieg to sticky snipe the enemy med thanks to the Quickie Bomb Launcher's damage boost, although the execution is tighter due to splash damage fall off. I didn't test this shit, I just eyeballed the numbers on the wiki. The banners provide potentially game-winning upsides to the Soldiers team, and I see them being meta staples. Many casual players don't realize that man-treads actually have a valuable niche in 6s. In short, the knockback reduction and increased air control create a soldier with almost undeniable bombs. Soldiers will most often switch to them in order to sack into last or other hard to break holds. They aren't seen full time due to the damage taken for rocket jumping, but in UU, you might see them if somebody wants to run a hyper-mobile soldier playstyle. Other than that, I see them reprising their sacking role from normal 6s and doing just fine in this meta. As of Season 18, the base jumper finally became unbanned in RGL, and I have no idea what to make of it. As of recording this, it has been a full season since it's unbanned, and I have seen nobody use it or even talk about it. I have my own little theorycraft ideas on what people could use it for in normal 6s, but as of right now, my money is on abysmal dog shit. Alright, we've just finished talking about all of Soldier's available secondaries, and now it's time to go on to his primaries. The black box is good for the same reason that the backscatter is, where it can be used as a nerfed version of stock. The black box is closer in power to stock than the backscatter is, and the downside of a reduced clip can be made up for by running a shotgun, which we established to be a great option. Its upside of health on hit is also going to be pulling some weight in this metagame, since without the crossbow, it's the only way for a soldier to receive health mid-fight while away from his medic. The Liberty Launcher has a lot of value due to the fact that its 25% blast jump resistance is the only way to reduce damage taken by rocket jumping in this meta. It's also probably the best crit recipient for soldiers wanting to do that banner building strat I talked about earlier due to its faster projectile speed and extra rocket. It's kind of hard to talk about specific secondary synergies with this launcher since the Liberty Launcher kind of wants all of them. It wants the damage of the shotguns to make up for its damage penalty, it wants to take advantage of its larger clip sides during a banner push, and it wants to take advantage of its added mobility with something like the man treads. Overall, I think shotguns are going to be the best choice for it. They allow it to take advantage of its mobility while also shoring up its lack of damage, unlike the other options. Man, if only Soldier had an option that didn't reduce his damage output. The direct hit is the poster child side grade in TF2, but in 6s it's rarely seen due to the current meta. Soldier gets most of his value from bombing, which is a high risk maneuver where you are guaranteed to die if it goes wrong. The direct hit massively increases your margin for error in order to give you more damage, when the stock already does enough damage. Where the direct hit shines is in slower paced, spam heavy scenarios. Its ability to nuke bombing soldiers helps to slow the game down as enemy soldiers are forced to respect it, if you're actually good. This playstyle makes it synergize greatly with the banners. Unlike the other options, the banners want you to play your life more in order to get more value out of them. The damage bonus also aids in charging banners and making use of their buffs. Like in casual, the shotgun could be a great choice for the direct hit, giving it more consistency, and the movement options like the man treads and base jumper probably won't be used much due to its playstyle. Now, the direct hit has the potential to be one of the best options in this metagame because of its damage bonus, but what if instead of doing more damage, you did no damage? I'm serious. The rocket jumper might seem like a meme, but with how much I've been yapping about the importance of movement and short-term benefit, you might be able to see where I'm coming from. As I've said before, one of the biggest changes to this meta is how much soldiers will struggle getting to mid while healthy. Normally, a rollout looks like this. The medic buffs the roamer to 300 while the pocket jumps slightly out of the spawn door, making sure to take lots of damage. The roamer rocket jumps all the way to mid, while the pocket does a few jumps and runs the rest of the way with the escape plan. In the choke before the mid fight, the pocket stops to get bowed and buffed with crit heals so he can fight the mid with 300 HP. With the current bans, the pocket rollout is impossible, and both soldiers will be taking more damage without the gunboats. The rocket jumper allows you to buff both of your soldiers to 300 and then put all of your effort into making sure one soldier gets to mid healthy while the other jumps around mid with a shotgun with their buff still intact. And yeah, the shotguns are the only viable secondary to pair with the rocket jumper, unless you want to equip the man treads and be a stock shovel trollger. The Beggar's Bazooka and the Airstrike are the only two launchers that I would call unviable due to how hard they're hit by the lack of gunboats. With the Beggars, it might be able to have a niche on last with its respectable damage output, but the Airstrike is practically just a worse version of the Liberty Launcher. Soldiers' melees are a bit limited with the bans, but there's still an interesting discussion to be had. The clear first choice for me would be the Equalizer, due to its ability to build Uber. This ability is invaluable, since Soldier's now the only meta class that can build Uber, with the Boston Basher and Zatoichi being banned. Speaking of the Zatoichi, it kinda brings up an issue, since Soldier can also equip it. I was debating banning it on him, since when banning multi-class weapons, leagues will ban them outright on all available classes, even if they're only problematic on one class. The Zatoichi is banned on demo because of usage, not strength, so it wouldn't make sense to ban it on Soldier because he doesn't meet that criteria. Plus, if I were to follow the former logic, I would have to do weird things like ban the pistol and engineer, which just feels wrong. With the Zatoichi in the picture, the Equalizer is immediately outclassed. The Zatoichi can build without using ammo, and it serves as a better melee option with its longer range and health on kill. The Pain Train is a decent option, but given that Soldier is the only Uber builder left, getting him to switch off the katana might be a tall order. Soldier's weapon bans are some of the most impactful of the entire metagame, but his versatile nature means that he can still be one of the best classes to use. I can see teams running one soldier with a banner focused on staying alive and getting long-term value, while the other is focused on mobility and frags, essentially a remix on the pocket and roamer dynamic we have now. With that is every weapon ban and how they would affect the Meta 6's lineup. Now it's time to look at the other classes to see how these bans would affect them, and if it could pave a way for these classes being run full-time. Sniper is the most used of the non-meta classes. He's usually brought out when things get slow in order to get a pick on the enemy's medic. As I said before in the Kritzkrieg section, even Uber situations might work out differently in this metagame due to both medics having the ability to snipe each other with crit stickies. Even Uber situations would be much more volatile, which could make it harder to use Sniper as the game would slow down less. At the same time, the nerfs to Soldier could make Sniper better. Soldier is commonly a class people switch off to in order to run Sniper, and the main counterplay to an enemy Sniper is to have a Soldier bomb him, which now is made harder without the gunboats or the stock launcher. Whether Sniper is better or worse off in this meta is kind of up in the air, to be honest. Engineer is a very essential class in the 6's metagame. He is the single best class at defending last, and thus you'll see him at least once in every 6's game. His defensive prowess is somewhat boosted by the crits only metagame, since teams will typically use the invulnerability of an Uber to take down sentries. I only say somewhat boosted because ideally you would want to spam out the sentry before you push in, and now teams are more encouraged to run one of the best anti-sentry weapons in the entire game. Engineer would be stronger defensively, but funnily enough, I actually see that being a good thing. Usually buffing a team's ability to defend last is a huge bummer for everyone playing, but with how much the Kritzkrieg loves aggression, it could be good for the tempo of the game if teams had a way to slow the enemy down. While Engineer's ability to defend last is his main claim to fame, he also has his other side, Battle Engie. I was actually on a team that ran Battle Engie full-time, and we actually did very well, until I got a new job mid-season. Surely my 9th season of Amateur will be the not scuffed one. Anyway, Engineer as a full-time class is actually pretty good. If you want an in-depth rundown on how he works, I highly recommend Queequay's guide on the subject. The quick and dirty version is that by running Engineer over Scout, you sacrifice his speed, double jump, and 2x cap rate for extra health and the utility of buildings. Mini-sentries provide valuable chip damage in fights and can act as an extra set of eyes and ears with their auto-targeting. Dispensers provide health and ammo while gaining utility as a piece of cover. And finally, teleports can provide a game-winning boost to your team's uptime at the cost of being a bitch to set up. My team's strategy was to run Scout for the mid-fight, then switch to Engie once they died. I can see this strategy being the default in this metagame, since Engie could already stand toe-to-toe with a Scout in the right hands, but now he has the better shotgun. Scout would still be a force to be reckoned with, especially on maps like Process, because ultimately there's no way for Engie to replicate the benefit of Scout's raw speed. Heavy, despite not having any weapons banned, might be hit the hardest out of all the classes just because of the lack of crossbow. Heavy is mainly used on last when you don't have time to get a leveled sentry up. While the lack of arrow tanking hurts his ability to make a last stand, the real issue in my opinion is the replacement of Uber for crits. Against crit stickies, 450 just isn't a large number. Normally, you'd want your heavy to come in during the tail end of the enemy Uber so that you can have a fully buffed heavy in position right as they become vulnerable to damage. This is hard to do with crits just because of how threatening they are during every second of the charge. Heavy won't be bad at defending last. He still has high health and amazing damage output, so he's going to be fine. Luckily for Heavy, defending last isn't his only niche. He's also brought out for the sake of attacking enemy lasts. If I'm right about full-time Engie being a thing, then Heavy could actually be eating good, since teleporters can allow sacking soldiers to come up on Heavy more easily. Pyro is a real weirdo. They're most commonly seen on last in order to protect sentries from spam and deny Ubers. It's much harder for Pyro to deny crits for obvious reasons. Denying spam though is huge in this metagame due to how much more powerful sentries are in last holds. I don't see this being overpowered or anything. If you have crits advantage, you can just kill players and take care of the sentry after. If a pyro is really denying your projectile classes, I can see teams doing something like having your explosive spam the gun from the flank while you crits a hit scan class like heavy or scout where the pyro can't do anything because they're stubby and vulnerable to bullets. Full-time pyro is where the weirdness comes in. I've heard of teams running a full-time pyro, but what I've seen has been unconvincing. Doing something like replacing Flank Scout with Engineer makes sense because there's common ground between them due to them both being hit scan shotgun guys. You just have one focused on mobility and the other focused on utility. Pyro doesn't really fill the shoes of the traditional Sixes classes. Due to their jack-of-all-trades nature, they can still be fine in the right hands. It's just hard to pin down what exactly they do that nobody else can bring to the table. If I were to replace a class with Pyro, I would pick Soldier, with it being hard to run two of them due to the lack of crossbow and gunboats. In fights, I see Pyro spamming ranged enemies with the detonator, dealing considerable amounts of chip damage, while waiting for the opportunity to rush the enemy demo or med. Their guaranteed close range damage is pretty threatening if you don't have a way to immediately deal with it. You can also use the thermal thruster, but in my opinion, it's a gimmick that a team can easily play around and counter while leaving you without a reliable way to deal damage outside of flamethrower range. Lastly, we have Spy, who is, for the most part, unaffected by these changes. He and Sniper do a similar job, so Spy will also be affected by the change in even Uber situations. Things would reliably slow down on last, but if I'm right about Pyro being more popular as a defensive class, then Spy could struggle somewhat. But other than that, there really isn't anything else going on with him. In the normal metagame, Spy is a wild card brought out when things slow down, and here his role would be exactly the same. So that's it. That's all the classes. At the end of this long writing process, I'm starting to think again about the arguments against comp that inspired this whole thing. People will often say that the current Sixes meta is too restrictive and stale. I think Sixes is extremely fun, and frankly I don't really respect this argument since most of the time it's coming from people who hate competitive gaming as a concept and try to frame their bias as specific issues with the current meta, even though they most likely wouldn't play even if leagues made the changes that they were asking for. However, there is a point in their argument worth considering. What if our current meta is holding us back from a meta that's potentially more fun? It is a little ironic though that this experiment revolved around me banning more weapons since the biggest casual complaint about comp is the weapon bans. Overall, I really like this meta. It's hard to say whether or not it's better than our current meta since I don't have a way of playing it. Except, I do. I am currently running a Discord server that runs pickup games, or PUGs, of this rule set. If you're interested in that, I have a link to the server in the description below. Hopefully it doesn't die in a week. Other than that, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you again in 3 years.
Delay for death.
Yeah, no, yeah. Milk him.
Do what?